The cathedral was silent. The crowd outside, holding their breath. And at the center of it all, Princess Leonor, Spain's future queen, standing in a moment that would be remembered forever. It looked perfect. It looked royal. But behind those dazzling smiles and flawless ceremony, lay a story no one knew. A story of tears, triumph, and quiet courage. Spain saw a wedding, but Leonor lived a transformation. It began long before the music, the gown, and the vows. Months earlier, behind palace walls, the young princess faced a decision that would define not only her marriage but her destiny. To the public, she was the picture of composure, elegant, poised, untouchable. But privately, she struggled with the weight of expectation, of being not just a bride, but a symbol. For the royal family, everything had to be perfect. The ceremony, the image, the message to the world. But Leonor wanted something more, something real. She didn't want a marriage built on formality. She wanted love, connection, humanity, and that quiet rebellion would change everything. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, the palace became a whirlwind. Designers from Spain's most prestigious fashion houses competed to create her gown. Every sketch, every fabric swatch, was debated endlessly. But Leonor kept her choice secret, known only to her mother, Queen Letizia. When the morning finally came, and the first light touched the royal palace, something in the air felt sacred. Outside, thousands gathered. Inside, her mother stood with her, adjusting the final details of her veil. For a brief moment, the queen was not a monarch, but a mother watching her little girl take her first steps toward a new life. Leonor looked in the mirror, her reflection shimmering beneath the soft gold light. The gown was breathtaking, crafted from handwoven silk, embroidered with symbols of strength, unity, and faith. But there was something no one could see, a single phrase stitched into the fabric, hidden over her heart. Mi fuerza está en mi verdad. My strength is in my truth. It was her reminder, that no matter what the world expected, she would remain true to herself. When she stepped into the carriage, the bells of Madrid began to ring. The city moved in rhythm with her journey. As the carriage rolled through the streets, people wept openly, waving flags, cheering, calling her name. For many, Leonor wasn't just a princess anymore. She was hope. Inside the cathedral, the atmosphere was electric. The pews glittered with royalty, kings, queens, princes, and princesses from across Europe. But as Leonor entered, the entire room fell silent. Every step she took echoed against the marble floor, her gown sweeping like a river of light. Even the most stoic dignitaries leaned forward, drawn in by her calm radiance. But there was one face that caught her attention, her father's. King Felipe, strong and proud, yet clearly emotional. Their eyes met, and for a brief second, time stopped. He wasn't the king. He was her father, watching the little girl who once followed him through palace halls now walking into her future. Then came the moment that changed everything. As Leonor reached the altar, her voice trembled as she began her vows. But halfway through, she paused. A soft tear rolled down her cheek. The cathedral gasped. Cameras zoomed in. What no one knew was that she had just seen her grandmother, Queen Sofia, smiling through her own tears in the front row, a woman who had quietly supported Leonor through the doubts and fears leading up to this day. Leonor took a deep breath, steadied herself, and spoke words no royal bride had ever dared to say before. I marry not only as a princess, but as a woman, with faith, with love, and with the courage to choose my own path. Her voice was steady, strong, defiant. The cathedral erupted into emotion. Even Queen Letizia covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. It was the kind of raw humanity rarely seen in royalty, and Spain felt it deeply. When the ceremony ended and Leonor stepped into the sunlight, the world saw only grace and perfection. But those closest to her knew the truth. That behind that radiant smile was a story of struggle, of sleepless nights, of balancing duty with desire. Later that evening, during the private reception, there was another moment the cameras missed. Leonor approached her mother, placed her hands on hers, and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me strength." Letizia, overwhelmed, simply pulled her daughter into a quiet embrace. The two women, so often compared, so often misunderstood, stood together as equals for the first time. The celebration that followed was magnificent. The royal ballroom glowed with candlelight, music, and laughter. Leaders and royals mingled, toasting the new couple. But the most intimate scene happened outside, in the palace gardens. Under the stars, away from the grandeur, Leonor and her husband shared a private dance. There were no cameras, no advisors, no expectations. Just two people holding each other, whispering promises that only they would ever know. For the first time all day, Leonor allowed herself to cry, not from fear, but from joy. From relief. From love. When dawn came, the palace was quiet again. The crowds had dispersed, the lights dimmed. Leonor stood at her window, looking over Madrid. Her wedding ring glimmered softly in the early light. In that stillness, she finally allowed herself to breathe. It wasn't just the end of one chapter, it was the beginning of another. A queen in waiting, now bound by love and tested by destiny. Spain would remember the grandeur, the beauty, the spectacle. But what they wouldn't see was the deeper truth, that the future queen's wedding was not about power or image, it was about becoming herself. Behind every royal photograph was a heartbeat. Behind every crown, a cost. And behind every tear Leonor shed that day, there was triumph. Her wedding wasn't just a royal event. It was a revelation, a promise to her people, and a moment that showed the world that strength, even in royalty, often begins in vulnerability. Spain celebrated a princess that day. But what they truly witnessed was the rise of a queen.